Welcome back to the Uzumaki Garage. In this video, I'm going to share some specific tips and techniques how to repair and restore the rear wing and boot lid or trunk lid on a Mitsubishi Evolution 6.5. About 18 months ago, I restored the rear wing and boot lid on my Tommi Makinen Evo. I filmed lots of steps with the new video camera app, but the camera kept hunting for focus and the image stabilizer wasn't working either. But there were lots of things that could be learnt from the restoration, so I've edited some video together and added lots of stills so I can still share the process. It's not as dynamic as I'd like, but if you're taking on this job soon, you can learn a lot by watching this video. And if you do learn something, put it in the comments below. It's hard to see, but there's fine cracks on this Evo's rear wing. I'm not sure if it's from slamming the boot closed or from driving on bumpy roads, but it's common on Evos and needs to be fixed or it'll end up like this blue Evo wing. After removing the rear wing, I flipped it over and soaked all the screws with Corrosion X several times over a few weeks. Some screws were badly rusted, but eventually I got them all out. And as you can't buy new replacements, it's lucky I've got some good second-hand screws to clean up and repaint. Evo 6 rear wings are really quite complicated, and they're assembled from many parts with a mix of gaskets, single-sided foam tape and double-sided high-strength tape. It's really important to either trace around or measure every gasket or foam tape before you remove it and take note of what material it's made from and its density. You should also photograph them all so you know their shape and their exact placement, as most will need to be completely removed before painting. Gasket kits aren't available and all the individual gaskets are no longer in production, and you will need to make new replicas to apply after the paint has dried and before reassembly. This rear wing end plate has a few cracks, and a segment has actually broken away completely, where you can now see a hole about 30mm long. Firstly, I wiped down the area with wax and grease remover. I used a file to remove paint and tapered down the edge of the hole and then cleaned it again. It's common to see cracks like this on Evo 6 wings, so my goal is to repair it to look like new, but to be stronger so it doesn't crack again. The internal steel frame stopped me from getting good access behind the repair, so I've packed masking tape in there so the epoxy doesn't fall away. Then I masked up the area to contain the adhesion promoter overspray. This is the 3M adhesion promoter that I'm using. This is the 3M super fast plastic repair, which sets in about 20 seconds, so you have to work very fast. And this is the plastic contouring sheet that helps you shape the repair if you're quick enough. The plastic repair 2-part urethane comes with a self-mixing nozzle, but for small jobs I prefer to squeeze out equal amounts onto a body filler mixing board and mix it quickly by hand. I've applied the plastic and smoothed it down with the contour sheet and let it set for a couple of minutes. Removing the contour sheet now, which comes off really easy. It sits up high, so I've plenty to file down to the right height. I've had some lunch, removed the masking tape, and it's about 2 hours later now, so I'll use a small body file to shape it and a razor blade to trim up the excess on the back. Next I sanded with 400 grit, preparing for the primer. The repair looks a bit red here, but that's just some colour from the sanded paint dust. I've also sanded some rust off the steel support bracket. I hit that stud with a wire wheel, but it's still a bit rusty, so it's getting some POR 15 metal etch rust neutralizer. And I've also cleaned the plastic with Aqua Clean. Masked up the area again and painted with Transtar 2-in-1 red oxide primer. I've applied 2 coats of red oxide primer to the repair and the steel frame. After the primer dries, I'm going to sand it flat and give it another 2 coats. I've painted the end plates, centre support and lower wing with red base coat followed by clear coats. And after preparing the upper wing blade, I painted it Scotia White, paint code W83, plus 2 coats of clear. I then made all the foam and tape shapes that I need to match the original tapes, foam and gaskets, and very carefully assembled the wing. My original trunk lid was a bit rough because someone modified it in a spectacular way to install trunk lid garnishes. But a good mate of mine donated his spare Tommi Makinen trunk lid to my project. I'm so grateful. There's a few cracks on the inner frame of this boot lid and also around the holes where the boot lid dampers screw in. I dismantled the boot and ground off the paint where it needed welding. I welded up the cracks and ground off most of the excess weld so it'll look neat but hopefully a bit stronger than before. All the old expansion foam has hardened and separated from the boot lid skin, which again is typical, so I replaced it with this 3M flexible foam. This expanding foam froths up and sets fast. It's messy too, but I think it's important to use because it increases the structural strength of the boot, reduces resonance, a bit like Dynamat, and after it's been trimmed up and painted, it looks great too. It really finishes off that OEM look. It's been a while since doing this job, but I'm pretty sure the next thing I did was to paint inside the boot lid with red tinted epoxy primer. Then I did the body filler repairs, then painted the inside of the boot lid with 2K paint with a matting agent to replicate the factory finish. In this footage the paint looks glossy because it's still wet, but it'll dry to a nice satin finish. And finally I bolted the boot lid to the car and then very carefully attached the rear wing to the boot. After sanding, polishing and adding decals, it's looking pretty good. Well, that turned out really well. I hope the video wasn't too painful to watch and it was easy to follow what I was doing. If you learned something from this video, give it a like. Hit the subscribe button and notify bell if you want to see more of my workshop and the cars that I work on. Thanks for watching.